Welcome to the Monday Motivation Spotlight. I'm Lesley Kaplan, welcoming you here every single Monday together with our co-host ACI. Thank you for joining, whether you're joining live or whether you're watching the recording. As I always say, it's great if you join live because there's more interaction and you can also network with other people via the chat. So today, for those of you joining live, we have a double event, which I'm delighted to share. We meet every week, once a week for the Monday Motivation, and once a month we meet for our Professional Women's Networking Forum. So for those of you that are live, I welcome you to stay on for the second half, which is going to be awesome with Annette Mashi, and I'll give you more details as we go. We're also going to have a 5-minute virtual coffee break in between. So this session is going to be going through to about 9:25, 9:26. Then you're going to be having a 5-minute break, and then we're going to be moving on to the second half. So what do we have for you now in our Monday Motivation Spotlight? Those of you who join us regularly, or even if you watch the recording, you know that every week our aim is to feature and to spotlight a special guest, somebody who's making a difference to the Israeli scene. So I'm going to actually spotlight her now. Good morning to Suzy Kahati, who is very well known in most of the Israeli circles, and I'm sure to many of you who are watching from abroad. Who is Suzy Kahati? Suzy is a family financial advisor. She made aliyah from the UK. You'll hear her distinct UK or British accent, which is different to mine. In 1983, which means she's been here for a long time. I made aliyah in 1990, and I consider that a long time. So Suzy, you've been here even longer than me. Right. So what does Suzy do? Suzy helps her clients get out of debt. She helps them to become wiser consumers. She helps them to understand issues about money and children, and also to set their financial goals. So Suzy, this is not an official workshop, as you know. Suzy's going to be sharing to us and sharing with us who she is, about her aliyah story, what brought her to her profession. And she's also going to be giving us some tips, even though this is not a workshop, on financial management. So Suzy, take it away. We're delighted to have you as our Monday Motivation Spotlight.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, ladies. Thank you so much, Lesley, for inviting me. I'm a big fan of your Spotlight, and actually I've reached out to some of your presenters, and I hope some of you also reach out to me as well. You're most welcome to. My contact details are suzykahati.com. Find me on Facebook, wherever. Anyhow, Lesley asked me to tell you my aliyah story, so I'm going to say it very, very quickly. My father was a refugee. He fled from Germany. So I was brought up in a background of the Holocaust and the persecution of Jews. My mother actually was born in England, and I'm third generation English, which was quite unusual in our circles. But her family made aliyah in the late 1950s, okay? So as a young child, I used to come to Israel. But I remember distinctly the age of 10, I accompanied my elder brother on his bar mitzvah trip, which was a month of summer, of sunshine, of the sea, sunshine Jerusalem, sunshine falafel, sunshine, ice cream, but most of all, there was also soldiers. And when I came back to England, I knew then at the age of 10 that I wanted to go and live in Israel, but I didn't want to stay in England. And I also, being brought up in a religious family, you see something else at home and something else outside. There was always a conflict. Like, for example, we saw Christmas. So my mother always ensured that on Hanukkah that we would get a present every night, so we wouldn't want to celebrate Christmas. I was very active in Bnei Kida. We established a garim together, and we came on aliyah in 1983 to Kibbutz Alumim. A lot of my friends are there still. And so that's my aliyah story. And sometimes people say, oh, I went to live in Vienna, I went to live in Paris, I went to live in the States. And I always ask myself, so why didn't you, when you came to Israel, want to discover the world a bit? And I said, no. The moment I came to Israel, I wanted to stay in Israel. I had no wish to make my home anywhere else. My aliyah story, in a nutshell. So Lesley said, asked me another very interesting question. She said, how come you became a family financial advisor? And I always say that the profession found me, not that I actually actively looked for plan B in my career. I was working in high tech then. It actually really started when my mother, she was, after divorce, she didn't handle her finances very proficiently, like most women of her generation. Okay, because she normally left the finances to be dealt with my father. My father was an accountant, so why not? So she was on the verge of bankruptcy, so we immediately imported her into Israel. But in Israel, she didn't manage her finances better. And then one day, my brother was looking at her finances, and he called in a meeting, and he said, listen, the situation is not good. And he divided up the positions as follows. He was going to deal with the legal aspects, right? My sister, because she's a physiotherapist, she was going to deal with all the medical aspects of my mother. And then he looked at me, he said, you're going to deal with the budgeting. And I said, no. I have learned never to argue with the elder brother because it just doesn't work. Anyhow, so I had this enormous task of going to my mother and helping her deal with her finances, okay? Now, that's not easy because, as parents, and I'm experiencing myself that you don't really want your children to tell you to do this, that, the other, because it's like a bit bossy. So what I did was I took her out for cups of coffee and actually, I had printed out, this was like 2008, no, about 2006, I printed out something from the internet that a family of 4 could live off 10,000 shekels. That wouldn't happen today. And I showed her this piece of paper and I said, look, Mummy, there's a family of 4 that live off at 10,000 shekels and you're way above that. She got a bit of a shock. And then we started working and said, what would you like to do? Like, I never asked her, you can't do this and you can't do that. She, because she was a woman by herself, she really liked to go and drink a coffee in a coffee shop. So I said, go and drink a coffee in a coffee shop every day, but don't put the cream on top. Remember, they used to have cappuccinos with cream on top, right? They don't do it nowadays, do they? Anyhow, so what happened with my mother was that very quickly, she started taking control of her finances. And it was done really nicely. I mean, it was really important for me that she didn't feel deprived. The same with my clients. They don't feel deprived. They don't feel they're leaving out. They don't feel an enormous change in their lifestyle. And slowly but surely, not only did she meet the target that we had set for her, she surpassed it, which was amazing. This was a woman who was never good with money. And all of a sudden, she's fantastic with the money. First of all, her self-confidence soared. But the whole family was in shock. You know, her brother was an accountant who tried to help her. And I was also very chuffed with myself that I had managed that so many people had failed. So my sister said to me, you really got to help people in a similar situation. So I said to her, Bernice, working with Mummy, she talks to me, doesn't talk to me. It's okay, she will talk to me in the end. But with families, I can't work on intuition. I can't work from my stomach. I can't just think about what to do. And I left it as that. But believe it or not, 2 weeks later, I don't say it's fate, I always say it's the Goral. I get an email saying, to come and study to be a family financial advisor, which I did, because it really inspired me in my mum's success story, because it was just so easy to rectify, and I wanted to help other people as well. So I finished my studies. It took a year. It was very intensive. And the end of 2008, actually it was November in 2008, I opened up my business, and ever since then I have helped numerous individuals and families achieve financial stability. But my story didn't end then. Because of the studies that I had learned, I managed to move my family from living in debt to a debt-free family. So at the time I got divorced, we had no debt, no mortgage, no debt. And again, it was pretty easy because what we did was actually put money as top priority. We also made time to talk about money. I mean, how many people actually talk about money with their partners in a civilized fashion? And one of the techniques that I have developed is that I ask for people to devote just 10 minutes of their time to money a week. In fact, I'm going to come out with a webinar on just those 10 minutes a week to devote to handling your finances, because it guarantees financial success. Okay, but my main story of today that I'd like to talk about is after I got divorced, I looked at my bank account one day and there was just 5,000 shekels in the bank account. And usually I give myself words of encouragement and say, Suzy, you're going to be okay. Don't worry about it. You'll be just fine. And that particular day, I just burst into tears. I don't know, it was a rainy day like this, what was getting more wet? My cheeks are outside. It was a really black day. It really was. I said, how on earth am I going to do it? And I said to myself, hey, Suzy, you know what? You've helped so many families and individuals become financially stable. You can do the same on yourself. And the background was that I had decided after 26 years of marriage that I needed to get a divorce because something wasn't working. It just didn't work. And I remember after a day of work and making the supper, I had to take the dog down for its walk. And it was a big dog, so it's a long walk. So as an incentive, I used to buy myself a cigarette from the local kiosk. So I would having a bit of like pleasure of smoking my cigarette. And I remember that day, it was a spring day, and I said to myself, okay, Suzy, what do you want to be? You want to be miserable with him, or do you want to be miserable by yourself? And I said, miserable by myself, I won't be. It will be difficult, but I'm going to get divorced. Now, I was petrified. I don't know what it was like. I was petrified of getting divorced. I was petrified of being lonely, petrified of being by myself. Also, how I was going to manage financially. I mean, but inside of me, I knew it was the right thing to do. It's just like coming on aliyah. You know that you want to come on aliyah. You know it's the right thing to go and do is to come on aliyah. But how are you going to manage? You know, you're going to step into that unknown, into a different culture, into a different financial culture. Everything is different, but you know it's the right thing. Anyhow, after 2 years of trying to get divorced, I actually got my get, which was wonderful. And then I started my new life. There was lots of ups and downs. It was pretty hilly, but you know what? I said to myself, I'm stronger than life. I'm not going to wilt away and die. It's going to be okay. So the day that I had this 5,000 shekels in my bank account, it was difficult because usually when you're married, you have 2 incomes, and now all of a sudden I have 1 income. I have 3 gorgeous daughters. I had to support them as well. They were still going through college. And now I had a fluctuating income. Now, why was I so petrified that I only had 5,000 shekels? Well, thank goodness I did have 5,000 shekels in the bank account and not minus 5,000 shekels. You have to be optimistic and not always pessimistic. Is because that I kept to a budget. So I sat down, looked at my budget again, and then I began to realize that I had to dip into my savings. Now, my biggest fear that is that usually when people get a lump sum of money, for example, a divorce settlement, a windfall, a bonus, an inheritance, winning the lottery, they normally go through this lump sum of money like between 3 to 5 years. And I've seen with a lot of divorcees that come to work with me, it's disappeared. It's disappeared. So I was petrified of touching my savings because I said, okay, I'm going to go right through them. And I said, hold it, Suzy. It's not going to be like that. You're a family financial advisor. You're very experienced. So there were a couple of things I knew that I had to dip into my savings. First of all, unfortunately, during the year of my divorce, my parents passed away. It was one of those years. Okay. Thank goodness it happened all in one year and not drawn out. So I had to pay for the stone setting of my mother. That was going to be taken from the savings. My nephew got married, and I had to make sure that I gave a present for me, my daughters. My daughters need new dresses, and they had the Shabbat brachot that we were hosting. That had to come out from my savings. And not only that, I had to have an implant in my tooth. That had to come out from my savings. Apart from that, I promised myself that the money that I would earn from my business had to pay for everything else. So we make the adjustments accordingly. I remember the first couple of years, I used to go to the butcher, get bones and make myself soup. I love mushroom and barley soup with meat in it. And I was so happy the year that I went to the butcher and actually bought meat to put in that soup, okay? We know how to adjust our spending. Also, I have to tell you, being in OVO, for 2 years running made me very humble and modest on my wants. I realized I could do with what I wanted. Unless I had to give a lecture, I could do without buying new clothes. It was amazing. There is a reason why we have to be humble sometimes. Anyhow, there were a couple of things that I had some rules. Okay. So the first thing I did was I really had a budget. I had to have a plan for my money, how much I would be able to spend on food, on clothing, on my children, on entertainment. Entertainment was really important for me. I wanted to go out. I wanted to be social. So sometimes my girlfriends would meet in a restaurant and I didn't have the money to pay for a meal. Don't worry, I went there and bought myself a glass of wine or a beer or had a cup of tea. I told my friends, sorry, I had a very late lunch, I had a business lunch, and they were very okay with it. But it was important for me to be with my girlfriends. I bought secondhand clothes, especially when I went for weddings, because I'm not going to spend 800 shekels. Where I live in Herzliya, Ra'anana, they're great secondhand shops. Anyhow, so I realized that my budget was my budget, and there were a couple of things I used tips. I used them myself to stick to my budget. First of all, I paid with cash. Why did I pay with cash? Because I visualized how much I'm paying. If I go to the supermarket and I have to pay 800 shekels, counting out the money, 800 shekels has such an impact on your brain, more than you give a credit card. You give the credit card, it's gone. You don't even remember that you spent 800 shekels. But believe you me, if you pay 800 shekels in a supermarket, at the end of the day, you know exactly how much your supermarket bill was. I also paid when I went to buy clothes. I went as much as possible. I used cash. Nowadays, it's not so what's it called? So modern to pay with cash. I can tell you, with the 20 and 30-year-olds, they don't walk around with cash. Everything's done by credit cards, and I have to adapt my methods accordingly. The next thing that I did, because I had a fluctuating income, I got 2 credit cards. One was to be debited at the beginning of the month, and one was debited at the middle of the month. So I can play around with my payments. So I know that I'm always going to live within our means. Okay. Also, as a business, there are months we make a profit, and months we don't. We just had the month of October, the most of the time that we didn't work because it was just full of hugging. So you might have a deficit. It doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, we got to the end of the year. The bottom line is we have to make a profit. So I didn't get my knickers in a twist when I didn't make ends meet, because at the end of the year, I had to make a profit. So even sometimes when you're in your, handling your household budget, There are months of heavy expenses, but don't get so worried. If you're managing okay, the rest of the year, you'll be okay at the end of the year where your household is in a profit. But the $1 million tip I'm going to give today is the one that really kept me on the right path. And that was, believe it or not, I tracked my expenses on a regular basis. Every single day I tracked my cash expenses because my bank statement and my credit card statements, all this is available online. I didn't need to track those as well. Once a week, I devoted time to dealing with my expenses. I uploaded them onto my fantastic budgeting form, which is it keeps it the KISS formula, which is keeping it short and simple. So I had a very good idea of what was going on all the time. At the end of the month, I would have a review. I would see what had happened. I remember 1 November, I had spent an enormous amount of money on going out, right? I said, this is unusual. I checked my previous years, and believe it or not, previous years, November was a big month for going out. So I said, okay. I also made sure the tracking that at the end of the day, I had a very good idea of my income, my expenses, and what my balance was. So my advice, if you would ask me for one sentence that would sum up, that would guarantee you financial success, I always would say is to track your expenses. Because you can negotiate with suppliers, you can build a beautiful budget, you can do financial planning. But I've met so many clients that say, oh, Suzy, we've tracked our expenses, and they only upload everything at the end of the month. For me, it's what can you do? What can you do if you find out you've overspent? But if you do this on a regular basis, you will always guarantee your financial success. And it's only 10 minutes. You'd be surprised how quickly and efficiently you can do it if you're focused on what you want to do. But you know that anyhow. When we're focused and we sit, well, especially at work, we switch off our phone, we shut the door, and we say, this is what we're going to do. This is what's going to be done. It's as easy as pie, as I say.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Suzy. Yes, and that is really an important tip, is that because we buy things and we do things, but not everyone tracks their expenses. So if you'd like to sign up for Suzy's sheet to get her budget sheet or ask her any other questions regarding your income, regarding your expenses, so SuzyKahati.com, is that right, Suzy? Or to get you on Facebook or on LinkedIn?
Oh, Facebook, I'm just Suzy Kahati. Not yeah.
Right. Okay. Fabulous. Thank you. All right. So thank you once again, Suzy, for being our spotlight this week on the Monday Motivation Spotlight. At this stage, I normally just do an ending and log off. So I'm going to officially stop the recording once I just say my last sentence or two, but make sure that you don't log off as normal, because then we're going to be taking a 5-minute virtual coffee break before we start our next session. So thank you once again to all of you who joined live or listened to the recording, and to Suzy. This was the Monday Motivation Spotlight. I'm Lesley Kaplan, co-hosted also by ACI. If you want to listen to other awesome speakers, and we've had many of them, go to my YouTube or my Spotify channels. Just type in either Monday Motivation Spotlight or Lesley Kaplan channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and that way it can pop into your feed every single time. So I'm going to officially stop this recording. Stay with us, and see you next week on the Monday Motivation Spotlight.